Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint of self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from those stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Hunch, instinct, deeper knowing. These are just a few names for that gut feeling or the ability to immediately understand something without conscious reasoning. In other words, the answers and solutions you come up with but may not be aware of exactly how or why. You have an inner knowing, an inner intelligence, and if you're not using it, you may actually be working against yourself. So today, you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into how to trust your gut and how to tune in. It takes inner listening, trust, and faith to listen to that inner GPS. And when we talk about trusting ourselves, the idea of gut feelings and intuition often follow. So we're breaking all of that down and talking about how to listen. And most importantly, I'm giving you a few tools to use to learn how to listen to yourself. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Week after week, I sit in session with women and their spouses, generally, and even their children, who are at a breaking point. We talk about trusting ourselves, and it doesn't seem to matter who they are or what background they come from. The idea of gut feeling often comes up. And I said something the other day in session that reminded me that this is something I tell myself often, and I realized I haven't shared it with you. And I feel like it's something that may actually help you. And that statement is this: if my gut is speaking, my brain needs to be quiet. Isn't that a really good indicator that if I have this inner knowing, if my inner GPS system is firing and telling me, hey, I need your attention, my brain, the thinking brain, needs to shut up, right? It needs to be quiet. When I was younger, I remember very distinctly my father saying, always trust your gut. It's never going to lead you astray. And in times in my life that I have trusted my gut, that has never failed me, right? I've always been able to follow my instinct, and that has certainly directed me towards the best path for me. And if you look at your life, you could probably find that same evidence. And yet many people struggle with that in the very difficult times. We want to stick with logic. We want to stick with reason because we think that's going to help us make better decisions. But not always. Sometimes the logical mind is locked into our past experiences. Remember, the brain's number one job is safety, and it can't see the circumstances that are on the outside, right? So we don't have a bird's eye view of what's happening around us, what we're really feeling, thinking, the whole experience of the moment. That's really how I liken or compare intuition or gut feeling or whatever you want to call it too, is that, that clarity, that moment of bird eye view, that flash, that tension or tightness in the body, the goosebumps, the stomach butterflies or nausea, even that sinking feeling, that pit in your stomach, the sweaty palms, the thought that keeps returning to a certain place or situation, even those feelings of peace and safety and happiness, especially after making a decision, are really big signs that your gut is speaking. Gut feelings, intuition can evoke a range of sensations, and some are physical and some are not. Some feel like anxiety, others are positive, and every time we've had those moments that we have trusted things work out. Some people even describe this feeling like their small internal voice that we hear. And there is so much science and research behind that. So I thought I would really break those things down and today give you a way to tune into that feeling, into that gut feeling, into the intuition, because it does help us mentally and emotionally. And that's just the truth. If we really guide our lives in a space that I'm listening, I know what I want, I know what I need, I know how I want to feel, I know how I'm going to get there, and I'm listening all the way, we have a way of calming the flood, being able to move through the storm, being able to really know what we are moving through and to, and creating action. It is one of life's biggest ways to overcome the struggle, to overcome the overwhelm. Now, you may be sitting here listening and saying, you know what, Danielle, I actually never hear my inner voice. I'm too locked out of it. I don't actually ever feel like I can hear myself. And I'm going to tell you that you probably experience faint whispers, even if it just feels like a little faintness of uneasiness. But the more you practice it, the bigger and more remarkable it comes. Okay, I want you to realize that when we lock in, when we key into what is happening within us and we start listening, we build that connection with the self. Gut feelings often seem to come out of nowhere, but I promise you they're not random. So that means that they can be practiced. And without even practicing them, just in the beginning of noticing them, it becomes very interesting to watch people kind of move through their thought processes and realize, as we're talking about these, that these feelings sort of feel like the brain encouraging you to take notice of your feelings. And if you've ever felt that way, understand you're not actually too far from the mark, right? You're not too far in your thought process. So let's talk about where they come from. Even though these gut feelings do, like I just said, feel like they come out of nowhere, the gut-brain connection makes it possible for your emotional experiences to register in your stomach area, right? As sort of that upset. And when you feel anxious or fearful or certain that something is wrong, you might actually feel like what I was just talking about, that stomach pain or that nausea. In fact, the name gut feeling, think about it, right? Let that be an aha moment for you. Gut feeling, I'm feeling it in the gut. There are a few explanations other than it being a spiritual download or, intuition. All of those things are true, but there's also some normal brain processing that's involved in this. So I want you to know that research is showing that these flashes of intuition are really certain parts of the brain processing. It's a part of the safety factor, the evaluating, the decoding your brain does with the emotional body and the nonverbal cues that you're picking up all day long. So as you go about your day, your brain is collecting and processing all of this data from your environment. So let me give you an example. Let's say you go to the convenience store, you pull up and there is a man and a woman absolutely losing their minds at each other, right? They're having a massive fight. And you feel that registering of, oh no, there's danger. You know that you're watching, but in the watching, your brain is processing this to automatically help prepare you for any situation that may come up. So the thought may be, oh no, I don't want to be dragged into this. So maybe you back up and you go someplace else. Or you prepare yourself mentally just to walk past them and go into the store. Whatever you decide becomes the background, the processing that's happening in the observation. And let's say you decide to actually go into the store and seconds later, this fight takes a massive and dirty turn. You stare in disbelief. Maybe your heart is pounding and the thought comes into your mind like, how did I know this would happen? This flash of intuition probably doesn't relate to any sixth sense, really. It's more of the fact that when you walked in, you made some conscious and unconscious observation, right? That there was something about the experience that you felt was about to elevate. So I want you to know that you are actually making predictions based on the experience that you're having. And also, we make predictions based on our past experiences. You can probably think of some gut feelings as a type of prediction based on what you already know. When we have memories that we fully can't recall or we're not consciously aware of, they can actually still guide us. And that's what's so important. Even if we don't have access off the top of our mind at or to something, I want you to know that it can still be in the background music. It can be in the thought process. And we have to really consider those things as pre-existing knowledge that we have access to. They're also called triggers, right? And just because it may not be totally true doesn't mean that your mind doesn't use this as the evidence to know how to behave at the moment. So I want you to think about that sometimes our gut feelings are actually triggers from the past. However, we still have to listen to them, and that's what's so important. When we have information come up, when we have it rise in our body, our job is to consciously listen, decode, and use it for our benefit. Now, before we go any further, right? Because a lot of people are saying, but that doesn't feel like intuition. And I want you to know there is a bit of a difference, but it's still coming down to this gut feeling for a lot of people. We'll talk about the difference in a second. But what I first want to talk about is gut feeling versus anxiety versus paranoia. Big difference, okay? Gut feelings bring up some sort of physical sensation, right? And so does anxiety, right? We can feel it in our body. So it can be tough to really know the difference here. And you might worry about or feel like you can't trust yourself because you're not sure which one is which. So let's lay down a few facts to distinguish between gut feelings, anxiety, and paranoia, right? So gut feelings, number one, biggest takeaway right now, will always lead you in a clear direction. It's that sense of knowing you recognize that comes up in a specific situation or when you're thinking about a certain moment or person. It's this intuition that leads you to a concrete decision or action. Big understanding. Anxiety really tends to focus on the future. It's forecasting. It has less definition, okay? With anxiety, you might find yourself worrying about all kinds of things, and particularly those things that you don't feel like you can change or have control over. And you might try to put in a couple solutions and get into overthinking to hopefully keep yourself safe or cope with any negative potential scenarios that may come up. But you don't really feel anything in particular. Like it doesn't hone in and you're like, oh, I feel happy and therefore I have anxiety. No, it's sort of this blanket feeling of define, try to put in something in place when you don't have all of the information, okay? And paranoia is not fact-based, much like our emotions. It is an irrational superstition of others, of their actions. You might be convinced that someone is talking about you or they mean to do you harm. And even though you have no real reason, no evidence to support your doubts, you just feel it. These feelings often show up in different situations across your life, and it actually doesn't normally tailor itself to one particular person. It's just that you feel that way about this person or that person, and you may not even recognize it right away that you're being fueled by a gut feeling, but a little bit of insight, a little proof, you realize that, oh, wow, I am just kind of throwing things out there and oops, I'm kind of putting my intention in the wrong place. And now that we kind of have a mindset about the differences here, let me tell you this. Gut feelings tend to only pass once you have made a decision. So intuition, this instant knowing, so that first spark, that snap, is pretty quick. It's sort of fleeting, but the feeling, when we're talking about gut feeling, tends to be a little bit more substantial. So it might start with the flash of intuition, but then the brain and stomach connection gets involved, and that's where it tends to sit, right? We have to really move through this in order for that to go away. You might even have a sense of relief that heaviness or that feeling has really calmed, or that you feel kind of more settled after the decision is made. Because anxiety, as I'm sure you probably already know, it's more of a passing feeling too. It typically leaves you once that constant threat or even the potential threat has gone. So that's also a good indicator, right? Is this a paranoia situation? Is this persistent? Is this the background noise? Is this fear? Is this just this gut feeling that started with the flash and has remained? Now, with all of that, let's talk more about when you should trust your gut. This is very important for mental health. And the reason why I say that is if you cannot rely on your inner voice, that inner knowing, a lot of times we have a big disconnection with the inner self. And that always is a great indicator that we're not in a healthy space mentally and emotionally. So a few indicators. A big one is when you can separate wishful thinking or manifestation thinking, intentional thinking, from a knowing. Okay? This is really important to kind of understand. Wishful thinking, something that I want so badly to happen, or manifestation thinking, this intention that I'm putting into practice in hopes that it will unfold. This is a big indicator. Let's talk about another one. It is that you feel confident and happy even when the decision doesn't seem very rational. Have you ever had those moments where you're daydreaming? Maybe you're thinking about quitting your job, but you don't because of financial reasons. And then you have this moment of clarity where your intuition, that gut feeling, starts speaking to you. And what comes through may not sound logical, but you do understand that there is a plan to it. And you tune in. And even when the ego is scared, it still feels right. That's a very good indication that this is a gut feeling coming through. Another thing, you might feel hyper aware. Intuition, gut feeling can manifest itself into a feeling of hyper awareness, where you're focused on your environment. Your senses feel like they are out of control. So a lot of people will say to me, I got so overwhelmed. I was so overstimulated. That is a very good indication. It could be that your sense of smell goes off the charts, or sound, sight, whatever it might be, but pay attention because these are clues. They're really there to help get your attention. Somebody once said to me, I notice whenever I have these gut feelings that the lights in the room feel brighter. And that's your brain's way of getting keyed into something, right? This is the forefront of the brain saying, hey, pay attention. Another one, the same opportunity keeps knocking on your door. Have you heard that old saying, the old adage, opportunity only knocks once? I don't believe that's true. I think if something's meant for you, it will keep coming back. And this is a very good way of keying into your gut feeling too, right? Into that intuition. Because when it tries to communicate with you, it's going to try to get your attention however it needs to. So it may be forcing you to notice little patterns throughout your life. Maybe you've been wanting a new job, but you're afraid to take that plunge, and your intuition starts, picking up on these little small details, or you start noticing job ads or postings. The opportunity for change for the thing that you're focused on keeps coming up. A really good way that you are noticing the gut feeling, the intuition, this inside and outside movement to get you in forward motion. Another one, I think we're on like 6, I believe, is you start noticing patterns when we are listening, when we're following that gut feeling, that intention, that intuition. We start noticing and detecting how things are falling into a line. The fallout of ignoring the patterns we pick up on often will put us in vulnerable situations or intense scenarios or even small situations where we feel like our brain is trying to connect the dots, but things aren't working out for us. So if you start noticing patterns, understand those are gut feelings trying to get your attention. You may even then begin to notice that your thoughts are being pulled into a certain direction. Like I said in the very beginning, gut feelings, intuition always guides you in the right direction. And so if you begin to notice that, hey, I've missed the signs, or my brain keeps wandering back to this particular thought, please slow down. It is an indicator that your gut is speaking to you, that your intuition is asking you to bring yourself back into focus, slow down for a minute, and investigate why you feel the way that you feel. I always ask the people that I'm working with to look at the patterns, the repeated thoughts, and look at the pull. What am I getting pulled to? What certain direction do I feel like I need to go without explanation sometimes? But what is this that keeps coming up? We write it down and then we look for any reoccurring themes. Now, everything that I've mentioned up until this point feels more positive, right? And a lot of times when we're following our gut instinct, our intuition, sometimes they feel negative and we struggle. Why do I feel so negative? And I don't want to lean into a negative feeling. You tell me all the time not to do that. So why would I do it? Right? And sometimes listening to our intuition has a negative tone to it, right? I want you to understand that. Sometimes we can feel uneasy about a certain situation. When we listen to our intuition, whether we feel happy or we choose to ignore a wave of uneasiness, understand again, those sensations, that tension is there for you to explore. Your emotions are a good indicator that something is happening. Remember, emotions themselves are direction pointers. So you have to get attuned to the emotion, attuned to the thoughts, attuned to the physical sensation so that you can find out, why do I feel the way that I do? If you're thinking about something and all of a sudden your heart is racing, is it because you are ignoring a red flag? Or is it because you're not taking action where you should? It's getting down and really digging into the relationship of the moment and trying to figure out what's going to work best for you in the situation. That's a very important thing to bring up, to think about, and to allow it to be your guide. The next one is you may actually feel sick. When you don't listen to your intuition, you may actually have more stress in your life. You may have the physical signs like anxiety. We were talking about that before. Or sickness may slowly creep into your life because your intuition is telling you you need a change. Physical signs in the early stages you might have, brushed off. But things like severe anxiety or even depression is showing you, hey, something is not right. Ultimately, the body does keep score, right? And when we haven't actually moved through a thought or a feeling or a moment that we're supposed to, the body is going to be the indicator. So how do I feel? Do I feel sick? Am I not listening? Do I feel exhausted all the time? What's going on? Let's go through just a few more. And the other one that I often hear is, I felt so inspired. When intuition was speaking to me and I was following it, I felt excited and I felt ready to really move forward. And I had this great sense of happiness that I hadn't felt in a long time. And remember that when we are in a space of listening, of interconnection, we feel grounded. So if you feel this inner spark of inspiration, follow it. There's a reason for it. This is another one that I hear a lot, and it is that I began to have very vivid dreams when these gut feelings were taking place. So while much of our sleep science remains still a mystery, we do know why we dream. And while it's bigger than just our subconscious working out the details or taking the processing that we've had all day long into our dream state, understand that your intuition comes in many forms, and dreams is one of them. Just like you had that stomach feeling or the hand shaking or anxiety or your chest pounding, dreams are another expression of that gut feeling. So when you wake up and you're like, wow, that was so real, or, oh, I had this magical idea that I've got to follow right now, these are still gut feelings. These are still intuition pieces that are speaking to you. Now, the last one, there are many others, but let's really lean into this last one. And it is that you find yourself pausing mentally. I do this a lot where I am, kind of thinking about things, everything's going really well. And then all of a sudden it's like the pause button just got hit in my brain. And I will really notice that my intuition, my gut feeling is registering something really excellent. You've heard me say, practice the pause. This is a little different relationship to that idea, but this is still a moment of getting quiet, listening inside, getting a little uncomfortable sometimes, and knowing that those mental hard stops are meant to get your attention. They are indicators that there's something that needs to be listened to. Okay? Following your intuition can be tricky. We know that, but there are definite ways that you can train yourself to be more aware. So now you know what it looks like to see it, to feel it, to hear it. Let's talk about a couple ways that you can get into the habit of growing that self-connection, growing that intuition to make it work for you. Now, to get it to work, remember this basic understanding. Intuition, the gut feelings are a feeling, okay? And so these exercises help you tap into the feeling rather than that thinking mind or the logic or the emotional mind that we often so talk about. And the very first one I love to do is unbroken writing. So here, very simple. Grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes, and start to write out your thoughts about a decision you need to make. While you don't have to write quickly, you don't really need to avoid pausing at any point. Just really let the words flow regardless of spelling or grammar or even clarity. What we want to do is disconnect the thinking mind, so that automatic writing, and get into the space that the intuitive mind will automatically prioritize the information it considers the most important, meaning that this is what you need to do. And by the time you finish that 2, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you will likely have a very good path, at the very least, a good understanding of what it is that the mind has been trying to tell you. Both the act of writing and the analysis of what is written should give you a good idea of your true feelings about something. I absolutely love this one. This is one of the top exercises that I have my people do. It's something I do myself when I need to get into a space of making a decision and I'm not really clear about it. Another tool is going to seem a bit counterintuitive, but it's to analyze your mistakes. It seems weird, right? But in order for your intuition, your gut, to guide your decision-making process, you must become intimately aware of how you make decisions and the outcomes of those decisions. You need to learn by looking at your past mistakes, right? That's why we have experiences, to pick up information, to gain clarity about what we want and what we don't want, to give us a baseline of understanding of the self, and then from there, create our values and our beliefs and so forth. But by analyzing your mistakes, you grow in your learned experiences. So this learned experience is a vital source of information from which your intuition can guide you and will guide you in your future situations, both in something similar and something completely unrelated that may have the same feeling attached to it. That's called a trigger, remember? So think about this and really get into a space where you're analyzing what you feel, what you learned, what you experienced, and did your intuition guide you, or did you go the opposite direction of what your gut was telling you? This next one is a practice. It is a practice, and the reason why I laugh is because it's hard as hell, okay? And it's something that I have worked really hard to personally use in my own life, and I hope that you will do as well. But it's to practice non-judgmental observations. Again, I laugh because we build all of our information, our experiences based on snap judgments. We do it, right? So here we're trying to work with being open to everything and closed to nothing. Your intuition works in a matter of split seconds, and it's, again, based on our senses and the information that we are bringing in. So by improving your power of observation, you increase your chance of that gut feeling or your intuition to provide you with an ultimate choice. Living mindfully is one of the best ways to observe the environment around you. It's extremely difficult, like really damn hard, to absorb information if your mind is always engaged in overthinking. By being more mindful, you give yourself a chance to really think about the process of the sensations, the thoughts that are coming, the sights and the sounds, right? It provides you with such deep information, such deep learning. So without judgment of what you see and hear, you give your intuition a chance to work for you. And that's exactly what it is. It's working for you. You have to stay curious, right? This is the next piece of that. When you are curious, you are observant. When you are excited and open-minded, you have infinite possibilities. When you're open to everything, closed to nothing, you have the ability to get really intentional. Curiosity doesn't have judgment. It seeks knowledge and wisdom and truth. It loves to connect the dots, and it helps you really understand the external environment and your internal world. It gives you this gut sensation to help you get into a space of openness. And when you practice that, practice getting creative. Creativity, whether that's through problem solving or art or music or writing or meditation or dance or yoga or whatever it is that you find to be your creative jam. If you get into that space, your gut feeling, your intuition gives itself a chance to wake up, right? It awakens the fullest potential of your intuition. Because creativity branches the divide between your emotional mind and the logical mind. It involves the feelings and the thoughts with this emphasis of interpreting the way you feel and everything you're putting into action. This is very similar to the process we use when we're interpreting what's happening through us, right? That intuition and making choices. If you get creative, you give yourself a chance to listen to that inner voice. And here is the big, big thing. Trust. Practice trust. Gut feelings, intuition involves trusting yourself. It says, I know what works for me, and even if nothing in this plan runs smoothly, I can still be okay with it. I don't have to lean into criticism. I don't have to get into a space so that I don't trust myself. Instead, I'm just going to use this as a learning experience. Again, open to everything, closed to nothing. Okay? If you practice this, if you allow yourself to be open, to ride the ups and downs of those gut feelings, that intuition, you practice your creativity, you practice the strategies of being open, you will get into a space where everything feels like it's in alignment, right? Open to everything, closed to nothing, listening, connecting. Are there obstacles to trusting your gut and to your intuition? Of course there are. Anxiety, depression, low self-esteem are just a few examples of what can get in the way. Anxiety is going to lead you to overthinking. Depression often means that you are trying to look through the rearview mirror and figure out why things didn't happen. And low self-esteem means that you don't like yourself enough to trust what your gut is saying. And then we have trauma. Trauma from the past could leave you with abandonment issues or trust issues or any other challenges that are useful in the process of listening to the self. These issues can cost you, right? It can make you say, I don't feel like I can listen to myself because X, Y, and Z has happened. And you have to push those aside. You have to practice these practices if you want to create a space where listening to the self is a top priority. Fear is another one, right? It prevents us because it's such a great liar. It says, hey, you know what? This is uncertain and it's going to cause maybe rejection and you're going to fail. And there's so many unknowns, but I want you to hear me. I want you to stop what you're doing right this second and just hear me. Not only is fear a liar, it really takes you out of this space of understanding this very simple and powerful thing. If it is fear of something you already have known, you've already experienced it, you can let the fear go. You already know how the story went. Okay? You already know what happened. Nothing is going to change about that. The only thing that will change is your connection to it. So the players don't change, the experience doesn't change, the event itself will not change, but your connection to it will. And everything that happened in it remains the same. You already know the story. What is there to fear? Right? Think about that. If fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of the unknown is getting in the way of you developing the sense of self, the sense of listening, it is time to let it go. I know you're saying how. There are so many ways. And this podcast is filled with them, right? What works for you? Strong emotions can also get in the way. When your emotions are super heightened, whether that's anger or sadness or fear or anything else, your mind is consumed. And that little voice inside of you is going to get drowned out. So you have to get out of the emotional place. You know, my big jam, the thing that I love the most is just to get down to the facts. What are the facts here? Leave I feel off the table and get down to the facts. And when you have it, you can return back to that inner listening. The emotion doesn't have to rule you. Yes, it's an indicator. Yes, it's the first place as a guide into listening to our inner voice, but it doesn't have to be the block either. Okay? A lack of confidence can also get in the way because, listen, trusting yourself requires a certain level of confidence, right? Confidence in your ability, your knowledge, your resiliency. If you lack confidence, you lack the ability to really get into a space of listening because you won't believe it. So you have to know, I can trust myself with what I am hearing and feeling. Another major thing that I see all the time, and it goes back to what I was just saying, is this inflexible thinking. This place where you put yourself on this high path of, I have to do this, this, and this. If I don't, nothing's ever going to work for me. I'm never going to have this job or this relationship. And you get into a place where it has to be a set standard form. That inflexibility will 100% calm and close, at times, the intuitive mind. It just doesn't have a space to be able to have such black and white thinking with creativity. It just doesn't work. So you have to be open, right? Societal norms is a big one. Sometimes we feel like trusting our gut goes against the grain. And guess what? In many ways it does. But what works for you? What's right for you? Right? Because if you're living authentically, you're going to be in touch with those gut feelings because you know what your true values and beliefs and principles are. You're listening to that authentic version of yourself. You're respecting what you need and want. And your inner voice is always going to guide you through that purpose and fulfillment, right? It's going to ask you to get into the flow of life, to use that rational skill of being open. And it's a space of really understanding what you need and want. I want you to understand that listening to your gut, connecting with the self, has a benefit on all 5 masters of our lives: mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially. If you're tuned in, tapped in, ready to listen, you have the ability to create whatever it is you so willingly desire. Intuition, gut feeling, is a powerful way to move into your life in a comfortable way. It may be uncomfortable in the beginning, but when you get used to hearing your voice and living your life through it, you provide so many benefits that the analytical mind just can't get to. The more you practice, the more it expands. So a good approach in your life is to stop looking at everything as a worst case scenario and start getting into that space of, if I trusted myself, what would happen? And then tuning in, listening to the signals, listening to the messages, looking for the patterns, and finding a space that works for you. The more you follow your gut, the more attuned you are to what you need and want. It's a very powerful way to live. It's a space that tuning into that inner GPS can literally change everything. And I hope you will. I hope that you will begin to listen and stop doubting. I hope that you will find the confidence to get creative, to get uncomfortable. I hope that you will find a space that everything you need and want can be provided simply by listening. What do I need? What do I want? How do I want to feel? And how will I get there? Can you see how these questions that I always ask come back to knowing and hearing the self? That's what I'm challenging you to do. And doing so is an essential step into getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you're seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, you can follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, and now Threads. You can also visit the show notes, my blog, and courses at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. I also invite you to follow me on Insight Timer for new meditations and courses that you will not find anywhere else. Thank you again for being a valuable listener. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.